It takes a village, right? So, you've said this before that it takes a village. And so we can be the village.
Well, hey, welcome to the Ruckus Podcast, where we talk about being a person of influence and how you can impact the culture and the world around you. I'm really excited. I'm here today with my friend Michelle Moses, right, who is someone who has a pretty significant impact. She's going to talk all about it today. But Michelle, I've probably known you for about 5 or 6 years or so. I met you when I first started looking into foster care and the system and seeing what ways I could serve and I could help. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, thank you, Justin, for having me on your show. I'm very appreciative and grateful to be here. So a little bit about what I do. Like right now, my official title is Director of Clinical Services for a private nonprofit foster care agency. And the name of that agency is Pathway Family Services. So I've been working in the foster care realm for 11 years. I've been working for this organization. It is a faith-based organization for the last 11 years in foster care as a social worker, as a manager. Before that, I did working with adults with disabilities. And I did that for 6 years. And then I was a drug and alcohol counselor for a year before I jumped into foster care. And I did like all these second jobs, side jobs. So I've actually done like in-home support. I've done worked at a group home, a boys group home. I did not know it was foster care. Like I didn't understand the work that I was doing. So I did that for a little bit. But that is like my career trajectory the last 20 years. You know, since I got like my first career job, it's always been in social services. It's always been helping people.
Wow, so you said 11 years in foster. You said you did some group homes before that and 6 years with working with people with disabilities.
Yes.
How did you get started? It seems like you're really drawn towards helping people who have kind of special needs or needs that are kind of more than the average person has. What got you started into that? How'd you get involved in all this?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, I came from like my own experiences, my own childhood experiences. I had a lot of medical trauma when I was a kid. Now, I didn't know it was medical trauma, but I had a lot of asthma issues and other medical things happening all throughout my childhood and multiple hospitalizations. That actually impacts your brain and it impacts your emotional development. And there were times where I felt like no one knew or understood what I was going through, and no one really understood my pain, like the pain of not being insecure, not feeling like you're beautiful or not feeling like you're liked, even though I was around so many people that actually loved and cared about me. So it wasn't that I was in this environment where people are telling me that I'm stupid or no good or sending these messages. It was just a part of that journey. And I wanted to be a person that was going to help people, be a person that was a safe place for people, to be present with them. It's so important for me for people to know, like when I'm interacting with them, that I genuinely care about them. I care about what you're telling me. I want to listen. If you want to talk to me, I want to be there to listen. I mean, I was kind of like a mini counselor to all my friends anyways. Like as I was growing up, like I was that person that they would kind of what do we say? We call it where it's like they just kind of offload, whatever
You're
stuff.
just the one everyone vents to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was that venting soundboard anyways. So I knew I wanted to be a therapist. That's what I went to school for. And I wanted to help people in that way. And God has led me. God is a very big, important part of my life. That's just like a part of my makeup. So you're going to hear me talk about God a lot. And I really believe he directed my steps, even though I didn't know that's what he was doing, to be in this field and led me to foster care.
Wow. Well, I definitely think you're really good at that. I know I've vented to you several times.
Yes.
In the past, but wow. Okay, so fast forward. So you've been in foster care for 11 years. Been serving in foster care, and currently, what do you do right now at Pathway, which is the organization you work for. What is it? What does a day in the life of Michelle look like at Pathway?
Yeah, a day in the life. Wow, that's a loaded question. Right now I am also the deputy director, so I'm like serving in two positions because we have a lot of transition that's happening. And we're growing our programs, which is actually amazing for us to be able to serve more kids and families that are not even in the foster care system. So a day in the life for me is 100% unpredictable. I never know what's going to happen. I'm going to have like an impromptu meeting that I have to do with my CEO, or I can have a crisis call, or something happens with one of our high needs children that we have to work on or problem solve, or help de-escalate a crisis with a child in a family, help walk that parent through it. A lot of paperwork, definitely, because the government likes to prove that you're doing your job by having a lot of paperwork. So we got a lot of that, but I also spend a lot of time like coaching and encouraging the team that we have. Like we're able to do what we do in this region because we have amazing people that I work with. It's not really me; it's them doing a lot of the work.
Yeah. So you talked about crisis calls, right?
Yes.
And how that can happen kind of at any time during your day. What does a crisis call look like? Like
Yeah.
what does that entail?
They could be many things. So a crisis call could be a 5-year-old that's having a meltdown, and you're like, as a resource parent, you're having a difficult time trying to console them. Like they're not able to be consoled. So they could be screaming. They might start kicking, hitting. They might start tearing up the toy room. Like there's those different situations. And then there's a couple of crisis calls with teenagers, look different. It's the same. It's just they're in bigger bodies because they're teenagers. But
Yeah.
they could be refusing to go into the home. Saying that they want to move, that they want to leave, or that they're going to run away. And I'm either me or somebody on the team is talking to them, or we physically go out. I mean, I remember one time we had these two teenagers in our emergency shelter home, and both of their social workers actually went out to do a visit, and it turned into a crisis thing while they were there. And they were having difficulty de escalating the situation. And even the resource parent was extremely upset. So they called me, and I'm not going to lie. I was like, why do I have to go out there? I like both of y'all out there. You can't do it, which is obviously not the right thinking. But of course, I went out there. I want to support my team, right?
Real
Um,
talk.
I was like, I gotta get in my car, stop what I'm doing. And I went out there, and it was an intense situation. Like there was a lot of emotions, and even with that resource parent, they were even angry at us at Pathway. They were angry at me. They're like, I blame you, Michelle. And I was like, okay, well, I literally just came because I was called. Um, so in those moments, that's where I believe, for me, having the Holy Spirit, having the peace of God, just listening, I'm still being present. I'm wearing that, being in that clinical role of listening to them, but being truthful with them. And the parent was able to actually calm down and de-escalate. They were just really hurt. They felt rejected by this kid, like that they've been caring for. And we need to understand that, as professionals. And then the kids, they had concocted this whole scenario, and I was like, yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. I'm just gonna let you guys know, being honest with you. You guys have two different case plans, so this isn't gonna occur. These are the only options we have for today. And we were able to, thankfully, because there was another resource parent, another resource dad who was a single dad, who agreed to take one of the kids because we had nowhere to put them. He agreed to take them, so we were able to de-escalate the situation, get the wheels moving on the bus again. The other kid was able to stay at that home. That was the home that was their long-term home, and the other kid who was placed there in emergency, we were able to find another home for that child. And he met the dad that he was going, like, this is the person I was trying to work on to be his parent anyways. And he was very apologetic, but at the same time, like, you can see that shame washing over, and it's like, okay, look, I care about you. I know you may not have had people who really cared about you, because he had been in the foster care system for a minute. He had he had bounced around for a while. And so, that was a moment to connect with a kid and help be a part of a stabilizing in that journey.
Well, so you said there was no place for him to go.
Yep, no place. I was just trying to get him in my car so we could get him off of the property, like get that situation calmed down. And I didn't know what was going to happen after that.
I think most people don't relate to being in a position where you don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
I mean, when we grew up, we always knew we at least had grandma's house and we lived with grandma for a while, but there was always a place to go. I'd say probably the most stressful was in college when you're trying to figure out what
Yeah.
roommates you want to live with, and if there's no houses available, what are you going to do? And that's kind of stressful, but you're going to be okay. But to actually be in a situation where you literally have no place to go and you have no idea what you're going to do, and not only that, but to be a child in that position, how often does that happen where you have someone and you don't have a place for them to go?
It happens quite a bit. In that situation, Pathway had some responsibility because that was our home and he was in our agency, so he's our kid. But for county, it happens all the time. County's always calling us to place kids. Usually it's late in the afternoon, like, around 7, or it's in the middle of the night because they're detaining kids for whatever reason. And they don't have anywhere to put them. So we have like an emergency shelter program. That's what we call it, but we like to call it emergency homes, where homes are just ready 24/7 to take kids and, just care for them for the short time. It's like, it's not somewhere where they're living with you forever. It's for a very short period of time to stabilize them, just so county can find a long-term home for them. But I would say, like, just within the last 2 weeks, I probably have gotten like 4 or 5 calls. There's been a couple that have been at like 12:30 a.m. and they have a teenager, a teen mom and her baby, or they have a pregnant teen, or they have, all different situations that are happening.
Well, so these crisis calls, right? These crisis moments, you're the person they call, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be a parent, right, having a crisis moment. Sometimes it could be the parent causing the crisis moment. Let's be real.
Could be escalating it a little bit, maybe.
Or you have the youth or the person in foster care who calls. Is there like a certain time of day they're allowed to call you, or is it anytime?
It's any time. So, like, right now, as we're recording, I'm on call. Like, I'm carrying the on-call phone for this region, the region that we're in, Santa Barbara County. And so we have to be available 24/7. That's part of our legal responsibility with our license for the state. But yeah, for us, we have to be on call. We have to be able to respond and to ensure safety of the child and of the resource parent and any kids that they have. We have to ensure everybody's safety.
So you're on crisis availability 24/7, basically.
Yes, basically. It's if you're a frontline social worker, you have like a weekly rotation. But as a manager, you're always on call, even if you're not,
There's no
designated,
rotation.
carrying the phone for that week. Like, I'm designated to carry the phone for this week, but even when I'm not, I have to be available to support the team, the people that are working with me in this work that we do.
Well, so I mean, you've probably worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of foster youth, of foster parents, right? Or, everywhere and in between, right? People who are interested or people who dabble,
Yeah.
right? I know.
You're a little
I
bit
know
of a dabbler.
when I first got started, it was. I mean, I kind of got introduced to this about 4 or 5ish years ago, and I remember the way I was introduced to it was actually a little bit of shock factor. So I mean, I typically try to read my Bible every day, and I remember it was a Saturday night. I'd read the scripture in James. It says, "Religion considered acceptable by our Father is this: to look after the orphans and the widows." And I'd read that many times before, and I was like, okay, Cool. I'll think about that
That's a
later.
nice scripture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at church the next day, we had a representative come. He was a pastor. I don't remember what organization he was with. It wasn't with Pathway, but
Mm-hmm.
basically representing and doing a little presentation on foster care. And something that he said that stuck with me was he said that for every church in America, if one family from every church in America took in a foster youth, there would be no more need for the system, right?
Yeah.
It would be done away with. And I don't know why that really hit me really hard. And just like, has someone ever told you something and you really want to forget it really quick, but you just can't? And
Mm-hmm.
I remember I thought about that all day. I went to bed thinking about it. I woke up thinking about it. Went to bed again thinking about it. Woke up, and just for weeks that was just all I thought about, which is what led me, to eventually reach out. And the council, Pastor Terry and Denise, they
Mm-hmm.
mentioned it as well in Iltra.
Yes.
They'd mentioned it and really kind of encouraged me to do it. But when you first sign up, right, just to even learn about it, and you sign up for the trainings,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the first trainings aren't trainings as much as they are kind of introductions and really giving you a lot of information to the state
Mm-hmm.
of what foster care really is. And I think, just the more you kind of dig into it and seeing some of those trainings and some of the presentations, understanding just how many hundreds of thousands of youth there are, and just how many, just how crazy their situations are. And you can speak more to this. Where are these children coming from? Like what's causing, these children to not have a place to go? Like where I don't know, what's the root of this? Where
Mm-hmm.
specifically are they coming from? Are they just families just abandoning them? Is it drug situations? Is it prison like where are they coming from?
It's a combination of all those things. I mean, when we're talking about foster care, the county is detaining them, so they're removing them from their birth family. And they have to have a court order to do that, and there has to be certain reasons. Sometimes it's substance abuse. It could be neglect due to substance use. Like, there's all these different, it could be domestic violence, it could be sexual abuse. I mean, these kids are going through a lot of different situations that would have a judge sign an order saying that these children, you have a warrant to detain these kids. That's how the county works. So as a private agency, we don't go out and detain the kids, but we are the receiving agency. We partner with county to have homes to place them in. And so that's where these kids are coming from, is the brokenness of our society. It's the brokenness of the family unit. So I would say I get calls for, especially for teens and teens that are in crisis situations. These could be, 15-year-old teen moms, a 50-year-old with a 1-year-old child. So that means that she had this kid when she was probably about 14, pregnant at 14. We've gotten a call from county, for different situations like that, for pregnant teenagers as young as 13, DV situations where, the human trafficking thing is real. Kids are being sold to, they're like child brides. They're being sold to adult grown men. And sometimes those men are abusing them, and that's how CWS gets involved.
Here in California.
Here in California, here in this city, in Santa Maria, right here. We have different situations. I mean, I remember we got a call. We took a kid where the baby was burnt, like in that, and we still don't know what object it was, but some adult was like literally burning this 2-year-old where he had a hole in his foot, and we had to like do the burn treatment and all that kind of stuff. We took in that little guy. There's some pretty crazy sick stuff that happens, and there's also situations where parents are struggling, with substance abuse, and it's not that they are horrible people, but they're not taking care of their kids, and their kids need them. They're not present for them, and it's creating a safety issue because they're being neglected. They may not be beating them or doing anything like that, but is creating unsafe situations. So we have, we have a lot of that happening. That's why CWS intervenes, is because of those situations.
Wow. So, for example, let's take the story of the child who's burned.
Mm-hmm.
What what do the futures for most of these youth look like? What do the statistics look like for youth who've gone through the system?
It does depend on the age that they come in, and what home that they end up with. Hopefully they end up in, if they're not able to go back to a relative, like a relative placement that's safe and appropriate, then they usually end up being adopted in foster care, and it's their trajectory is determined by that family that takes them, and either the family and also the education and knowledge, or lack of education and knowledge of how to help a child who has had early traumatic experiences, especially if it's before the age of 3, before they have language. That has a lot of impact on kids, on their brain development and their social emotional development. I will say, like, for our teenagers, the statistics are dismal. They're not positive. Like, if a kid comes in the foster care system at 16, they don't have good outcomes. Are they been, like, I know some kids who have been in the foster care for 9 years. They were detained when they were 12 or 10. They've been in for all these years. Statistics are not good for them after they age out. They usually end up being a statistic that we talk about, where they are, if they're girls, they might be pregnant as soon as they turn adult, have several kids, and be needing to utilize the welfare system, or they are going to get into things where they get incarcerated, they end up in jail. We had a kid who ended up in a really bad situation. He's locked up right now, even before he turned 18. So, that's where we need parents to, when we can intervene early, and we need, like, when this kid was 14, when we first engaged him, he didn't stay in our agency, but he came back to us for a short period of time before being locked up. And I don't know if he's going to be locked up for life. I'm not sure. Just got into some really bad situations. There's plenty of negative people ready to take these kids and mold them to what they want them to be. We need more homes to be willing to go through that journey and mold them into who, amazing men and women that God created them to be.
Yeah. So you mentioned, being able to support parents as one of the challenges. Are there enough parents signing up for?
No, they're not. So in the counties that my agency serves, and I believe we're like in 6 counties in this region, um, I work with our team for 2 counties, for San Luis Obispo and for Santa Barbara County. And sometimes county social workers have to sleep in the office with kids because they don't have anywhere to place them, and they're just trying to find somewhere. And
So they
so,
just sleep in the office.
yes, some are putting them in hotel rooms. I mean, there's a big scandal in Fresno County, with how they were just trying to manage housing children in, I think it was in a building. I don't even think it was in a hotel room, and just staffing it 24/7. So there's not enough homes, and there are not enough people who are trained, are willing to work with teenagers, and teenagers that have substance abuse problems. Teenagers that, not all of them do. I mean, there's typical teens out there, but a lot of the kids that we encounter, and when I say teens, I'm talking like 12 and up, those kids that are struggling. We don't have a lot of parents who want to take those ages into their home.
So, my question to you is, you've worked in this for 11 years, and, I'm sure probably the plan is to keep doing it for much longer, but you've seen some of the most, I'm sure, amazing success stories, right, of someone who's gone through the system and has ended up coming out the other side healed at some level, successful at some level, but you've probably also seen disappointing stories and very tragic stories that didn't end well for people who went through foster. And my question is, having to be on call and having, knowing all these statistics and being in the trenches, Why and how have you been doing this for 11 years?
Yeah, that is a really good question because, like, statistically, foster care social workers only last about 18 months. Like, if you do, they've done research on this.
Yeah, I
So,
could understand why.
yes,
Yeah.
it's really intense work, it's trauma work. My why is it's linked to my faith and to what God has called me to be, who He's called me to be, and the way He's called me to serve. And it is through loving people, walking in truth and loving people and, being an example of the love of God. It's easy to love people when things are good or when they love you back. It is difficult to choose. It's a choice. Love is action. It's not just what we say, is what we do. And we all need someone. We all have needed someone to love us in some dark moments or in moments where we felt helpless. We needed somebody to say, like, hey, I see you. I value you. I'm here for you. And like, you don't have to do this by yourself. So that's part of my motivation because I didn't have that as tangibly as I felt like I wanted as a kid. I felt alone a lot with all of the things I went through with my medical trauma and all this different stuff. Even though I was around people that loved me, I didn't always feel loved or I didn't feel that they understood me, like how this impacts me, how this makes me feel. Um, and so I knew that when I grew up, I wanted to be a therapist because I was kind of like the person that my friends vented to, anyways. But I wanted to be able to, like, not just be that safe place to hear, but like also, like, hey, let's work on this. What can we do together to build a solution or to make a change in their lives for them to decide or be motivated to make that change? So that's why foster care for the last 11 years, because it's amazing to see when you get to see the real child, not the trauma, not the mask, not the survival stuff. And like it's really sad. These kids have to learn these skills to survive, to stay alive. And we as a society, we want to penalize them for that instead of helping them to learn a different way. No one ever taught them any different. No one taught them that you have to be respectful. Like we put this big emphasis on that. No one taught them that they were safe people. They've learned that people are unsafe, that the best person to take care of me is me. That's what these kids have learned. So when you're able to like connect with the heart of a child and when they're happy to see you, especially for the teens, like when the teens are happy to see me, that's like, because they're not happy to see their social worker. They're tired of us coming in all the time. But when you have
Sure.
that connection with them and, they feel loved by you and they feel like they're important to you, that's some of the things that keeps me going for sure. Like when we think about, like some of these adults, maybe like you have, I don't know if I think like some of us have these friends where you're like, they're a little bit too much. They do too much all the time. They're crazy. They always get in trouble, whatever. A lot of, if we took time to peel back the layers, I would guarantee you that they had childhood trauma, some type of trauma that led them to this place. So, our foster youth are in that same situation. They're on that trajectory if we don't intervene. So the best thing that we could do is have early intervention, for the actual families, the birth families. But if that's not, if we're not able to help them be safe and help those families in that situation, there's not a lot of services for birth families. So I'm just going to say that. Like I'm an advocate for having more services for the biological families and members of the family. Then you have foster care. But even there's not a lot of people who want to take kids. Like they don't want to invite trauma into their home to live with them. And it's hard. Like it is hard work. It is the most selfless thing that you could do is to be a resource parent. But to truly be that safe, healthy, loving adult that helps this child on their healing journey is the most selfless thing that we could do. And there's not a lot of people that are trying to sign up for this hard work because it is hard.
Yeah. So what's the difference between a foster parent versus a resource parent? Just for the listeners.
Sure. So a foster parent is a resource parent in California because we like to change names and stuff. And so one of the reasons it was changed from foster to resource is because those parents are supposed to be a resource to that child, not just food and shelter. Like you're not just a drop-in center where we drop kids off and you don't meet their needs. So I believe this is my understanding. They wanted to change that mindset that you are a resource to this child, that you are responsible for advocating for them. You're responsible for looking to all the agencies that are supposed to help you, to find resources for that child, for their needs, educational, developmental, mental health, behavioral, physical, all those things. So that's the difference between them.
Got it. Okay. So, to one extent, in my limited experience with the system, it seems like the number of youth being put in the system is growing and growing and growing. It seems like the available resources, whether that's in the form of resource parents, social services, whatnot, seems to be less and less on that scale. And it kind of seems like the problem is getting worse, not better.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks, well, I think counties are typically like the government level, right, that
Yes.
handles it. The real root of what causes foster care isn't something the government can fix.
Yeah.
It's a heart problem, it's a people problem. But
Yes.
one of the things that actually does bring me a lot of hope when I think about the situation are private organizations, because you represent Pathway, which is a private foster organization, which is a little bit different than if someone were just to go straight to the county for foster care. Why don't you explain a little bit about what that means?
Sure. So when you're working with a private foster family agency, they're licensed by the state, to do the work. But we have smaller caseloads, so we're able to be more present with our kids and our families. We recruit our own families and we train our families, and we're able to be a support. So we're in your home more often. We will answer our phone if you call us. We will pick up. We have on-call rotation that's different from counties on-call. It's more personal. We're able to add that more personal touch and be available to be that emotional support, to be I like to look at us as being life coaches. That's what we're like. We're your family life coach.
Yeah.
Because we wear a lot of different hats to help you serve, and well, not serve. We are serving you and helping you to care for that child, and we're serving the child by doing that too.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those of you who are listening, who are thinking about getting involved with foster care, I would definitely recommend the private organization as well, because at least my experience is it seems like, the county, a lot of it is just their capacity. They don't have the capacity to handle, right, a lot of the situations, but it really does seem like when you approach an organization, is it's like, oh, these are the boots on the ground, right? Oh, this is actually the tribe that's going to be on the ground, that's going to help. Yeah, the county will supply, the funds and, whatever administrative stuff is needed. But really, it feels like when you start getting down to the organizations, right? This is not a knock on the county by any means.
Right.
But it just seems like, wow, this is really where, the cause is. This is the cause on the ground here. And yeah, I'd definitely recommend anyone who's thinking about getting involved with foster to definitely go through a private organization. There's a little more paperwork, and definitely at the home a lot more.
Yes.
It's a good thing.
We're up in the home. A little bit in your business, just a little bit.
Yeah. But man, when I think about, just the situation, it really does seem to me like that is part of the end goal, the end solution, right? You think about, foster has become your cause for the last 11 years. And, I'm sure there's some hope for you in there, but I'm sure there's also a lot of discouragement just based off of the stories you've had to see, the experiences you've had, the statistics of youth who go through it. And I'm sure with you as this being your cause, you have a vision, right, as to what the dream would look like. Ultimately, I would assume is the end of foster care. Right?
Yes,
I don't mean
absolutely.
like you out of a job, right? But when you close your eyes and you dream about the situation and where you see it going and why you've jumped in and what you hope to accomplish. When you close your eyes and you dream about this, what do you see? Like, what is your vision? In your opinion, what is the answer for all this? How do we fix this?
Yeah, I mean, I do see, I mean, I want to be worked out of a job. I would love it to where we did not need foster care, to where every family that was struggling with trauma, whatever parent struggling with their trauma story, would have tools to make sense of what happened and have tools to move forward and be the parent that they want to be. Parents usually don't grow up and say, I want to abuse my kids. Like, that's not the story. I mean, you may have those one percenters who are really unhealthy, but like even then, if we dive into the nerdy scientific research stuff, there's a few situations as to why that might be the reason. For every other parent, they don't want to be that way. They didn't say, "Yeah, I want to have kids so I can abuse them." That's not what they said. So, ideally, yes, we want to work ourselves out of a job, but for me what it looks like is having where there's no funding restraints, right? Like we can tell what we value by what we put our money to. What does this society put their money to? We will pay for-profit CEOs millions of dollars, stock options, all these different things, right? And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying they don't deserve those things. But what do we put into foster care? What do we put into children? What do we put into their education? And what do we put into the families that they're a part of? Not a lot. Like our society gets an F, in my opinion, on that. I mean, I love our country and I think we have amazing opportunities, but we also have a lot of work to do, especially in minority, populations. So, what I see is where we have more people stepping up to be resource parents. And if they can't be a resource parent, they're stepping up to serve in a different way. We have resources and clinical interventions that actually work for the population that we're serving. And where money is not an issue. The funding should never be an issue for a child, the value of a child's life. And at the end of the day, these government systems are businesses and they have limited budgets and, there's things that impact, what we're able to do. But we as a society, we can come together. We will raise money for all kinds of things. We'll make sure we can get McDonald's, but like we can't take time out to maybe hang out with the kid or take them to the park or answer that phone when that resource parent calls and just needs to vent, be a safe person. So having opportunities, more organizations that create that opportunity for people to be engaged. That's my dream.
Well, so part of our vision with the show is to really give people practical, tangible tools, right, to be able to help with what's going on in the world. To really impact the culture, not just to talk about it, not just to go on forums and complain online and argue with your Facebook friends about stuff, but practical, tangible things we can do. So it seems pretty obvious that one of the most impactful things someone can do is to be a resource parent. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah. Dude, is there a pretty severe shortage? Would you say there's kind of a shortage, or what? How would you say the availability of
pretty severe?
Pretty severe.
Yeah. County workers are sleeping in the office sometimes because they don't have anywhere to put kids.
They're sleeping with. They have the kids who are also staying at the
in the office. Yeah.
Wow.
Sleeping on the couch. County workers up, trying to stay awake in the middle of the night. It's yeah. Some are in hotel rooms. Different states have. I will say I feel like every state is in crisis. It's not like, oh, this state's doing great in foster care. Maybe there's some things that other states do well, but every state is in crisis with a shortage of resource parents or foster parents. California calls foster parents resource parents. I think every other state calls them foster parents.
Yeah.
So there's
Sorry,
a severe
I'm trying
shortage.
to keep it right. I'm trying to be correct in the language too. I don't know.
No, it's good because I think there's people that are like from different areas, right? So in their area, it's going to be foster parent. here it's resource parent. It's the same thing.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay, so obviously the biggest need is foster parents or resource
Hmm.
parents, people to step up and sign up. But at the same time, it's one thing to say it, but as you said earlier, it requires your life,
It does.
and that's something that everyone has to wrestle with who's interested in doing it for
Hmm.
sure. And maybe even the listeners wrestling with it, and you know one of the things that I think hurts causes is if there's only like one way to help, and that's just to
Yeah.
throw your whole life at it, which is noble, I guess.
Hmm.
But, maybe for the listener who just isn't in that spot right now, maybe they're not in a spot to, or they have the capacity to be able to take in a foster child right now, or maybe they have a family and just, that's just not what's best for their family at the time. That's not, nothing wrong with that, not, no guilt or shame or anything. But, is there anything that someone in that position can do? Maybe someone who doesn't have the ability or the capacity right now
Hmm.
to jump into the system as a foster parent. Is there anything else that can be done to help?
Absolutely. So I'm going to talk about two categories of different options. So you can be a resource parent, and we get that. It is the most selfless thing that you could do is to be a resource parent that is truly loving kids and putting that child first, and requires bravery because you got to deal with your own stuff in order to be present. And that's a lot of work for us, right? To deal with our own triggers and our own issues so that we can be emotionally present for that child and connect with them. So everyone is not, that's not everyone's cup of tea, and we get that. But it takes a village, right? So, you've said this before, that it takes a village. And so we can be the village. So people can be the village. I remember for 1 year for county, I gave them these little, I think it was like little cards, and it said "Be the Village" because it was cute. But it's true. Each and every one of us can be the village. So you might be a neighbor. You could make dinner for a resource family that's busy and crazy. They have therapy appointments. Like, being a resource parent is not like being a parent, a typical parent. Unless you have a special needs kid, unless you had a kid that had medical needs, or you have a child with autism, those parents what they go through is very similar of what resource parents do. You have therapy, right? You're trying to get them into sports. They might have tutoring. You have all these services that you have to do. You're on the run. Well, if you're a neighbor, maybe you can make dinner for them. Maybe you could ask them, how can I help you? How can I help you in your journey? Maybe you could pick up that kid that 1 day a week where they're always trying to struggle to get them from school to their next appointment. You could be that person. You could commit an hour a week to help them. Or maybe you're just going to commit an hour a week to hang out with the kids so that that parent has a break, so they can go to the grocery store alone and not have to deal with meltdowns in terms of trying to buy food for the house.
Sure.
So those are practical ways, and you can be a respite care provider. Those things would be considered things that respite care providers do. It's a fancy word for babysitting and foster care. So you could connect with your local private foster family agency and see how you can get plugged in. It'll probably be easier for you to plug in with a private foster family agency versus going directly to the county, because it's such a big system. So it might take you a long time to get plugged in. So those are things that they could do. They could also participate in this other organization that I support. It's called Coins for College. I'm an advisor for them. I'm not an employee, but this organization, it touches my heart because the CEO is a former foster youth. And he's a foster youth who grew up not just in foster care. Him and I believe he has 6 siblings. He was placed in a group home at the age of 12 because they bounced around in so many homes. You'll hear his story if you look him up. His name is Joshua Samuel. He asked to go to a group home because it was more stable instead of being kicked out of foster home in New York. And so he has this mission and this passion with Coins for College. It's an ed tech platform. You can get the app on Google Play or on the Apple Store. It's about education, but it's more than that. And I'm going to direct people to the coinsforcollege.org website to learn more about it. it caught my attention because he was talking about how we could help. There is a niche of helping foster youth because that is his story. He lived that. He had some not so great experiences in foster homes. He had some not so great experiences, in the group home. But he also had some amazing people that helped him along the way, and even as an adult,
Wow.
for him to become, the CEO of this company. He's a brilliant man, and he genuinely loves people and cares about people. So he created this organization. We can support Coins for College. Let's just say you're like, I don't have time to be watching any kids. I don't have time to make food for somebody, but I still want to find a way to support. Coins for College has an Amazon link. So when you shop their link, and you could buy whatever you just normally buy from Amazon, a portion of that goes to Coins for College. And then a portion of that is going to go back to the parents that are supporting kids in their education through the app. So it's going back into children and families. Wow. And the app was created to not just for kids to get to college, like that is the point. Like that is the point, but we know that kids are successful when their parents are engaged. So the app is created to make that link, that partnership with technology with your child and the parent, getting that parent engaged. The parent gets incentivized and the child gets incentivized.
Wow. So that's coinsforcollege.org.
Yes. Coinsforcollege.org.
All right. So those who are listening, right, if they want to help, probably what's best to do is, if they want to help like on the ground, is check out a local foster organization, private. Mm-hmm. If you want to sign up as a foster parent, awesome. If you want to support a foster family through respite, right, which is like basically babysitting.
Yeah.
Or, even supporting meals and all that, it's a great way to get involved. And even if you don't have the capacity for that, this coinsforcollege.com and the app really just helps set a lot of these young people up to have a brighter future, and you invest in their future. So there's several ways it can help.
Absolutely. And even if you're like, you could just be a parent that has kids, you could use the Coins for College app. You using the app is helping as well. So like, there's so many different ways. Just use it. Or if you're a person who doesn't have kids, buy all your Amazon stuff through the app.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, thank you for everything you do.
Yeah. You know what? I got to give glory to God. I mean, it's been an amazing journey. It's been an amazing journey for me. And I love this work. I love connecting with people. I love seeing how God touches our hearts and brings healing. I love to see our families be successful and our kids be successful. So I appreciate this opportunity for me to talk, because I'm a talker. So, and I have a mic. I'm a listener. And I have a mic. I'm like, this is the best right here.
I could turn it up if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll be talking. You're going to have me in this room. I'm just like talking away, talking to myself.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have to do a lot more episodes together then.
For sure. I have so much. We should do like a therapy episode. Just talk about therapy for people of color. That's a whole other thing we could talk about.
Maybe we could have a therapy session.
Yeah, it could. We could do some practice on some tools. For sure.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you for coming. And for those of you who are listening, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, anywhere you can listen to podcasts. We're also up on YouTube. If this really meant something to you, if this spoke to you, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, share it with your friends. We've got a lot more exciting things coming up. We're going to talk a lot more about this in the future. Really excited. Please get involved. Please go visit your local private foster organization. Please go to the website, coinsforcollege.org, see how you can help, and let's turn this thing around together. Yeah?
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Cool. Well, till next time, much love.